Now, welcome to another lightning response video, where this time the question comes to us from General Kenobi, who asked, Thor, why do they cling so hard to Rey when they got a home run like Jyn Erso? They literally have a roadmap of what's successful, and they ignore it. Well, I think it's likely that the reason why the Rey movie is getting made, or why they seem to have reluctance to let her go, or why Kennedy does at least, is simply because Rey was, and still is in their mind, she's meant to truly represent something far more than just being a character in Star Wars, much more actually. They didn't just want her to be, or envision her to be, the next iconic character from a galaxy far, far away, one that would sell a bunch of toys, nor did they just want her to be this big, warm, welcoming gateway for women to be able to get into Star Wars more easily, though that was certainly part of it, I think. What they truly wanted her to be was a real-world icon for women of all ages. I mean, just look at the sheer number of articles that came out around The Force Awakens, both before it was ever released and especially right after it came out. Articles literally hailing her a feminist icon and going on and on about just how important Rey was. That she was marking a turning point not just for the Star Wars franchise or the film industry, but for society itself. That she was something very important for our real world. And if you're brave enough to read some of these articles, you will quickly realize that not only is Rey essentially above reproach in their eyes, but even the thought to potentially critically analyze this character in terms of, or in relation to the story, that doesn't even compute or occur to them. You quickly realize that in a lot of cases, not all of them, but in a lot of cases, these are not Star Wars fans happy to see a woman as a main character in a Star Wars trilogy, which I wouldn't fault them for, or anyone for. If you're a woman who has loved Star Wars forever and you were happy that a woman is in a leading role, I think that's fine. I totally get that. But the problem is some of these people who wrote these articles or posted elsewhere online about this that I have come across in my years covering Star Wars and sometimes in the comments of my videos, the problem is they wouldn't have watched it or been any kind of fan of it until this happened, because Star Wars, in their mind, has been inherently flawed before this. In some cases, you can even kind of feel this level of animosity towards Star Wars and its fans from them. That this was something they actively disliked or even hated, and now, well, they still don't exactly like it, but they feel like now they potentially could, or like it's proving a point and now it suddenly has value. Problem is, for most Star Wars fans, male and female alike, all that really matters to them is how good the characters are and how good the story itself is. And so when some fans started to immediately reject Rey for character or in-story reasons, or even question where this was all going with her, those who wanted her to be more or saw her as more, well, they intentionally, I'd argue, they kind of conflated that dislike or rejection of the character for not only a rejection of what she was meant to represent, or already represented for them, but also as an absolute objection to it, as if not liking Rey was actively not wanting women in Star Wars, or even just hating women in general. Even though there had always been women in Star Wars, and you would be extremely hard-pressed to find any sort of issue with or objection to characters like Leia, for example. Or you could even look at a character like Ahsoka Tano, who certainly wasn't warmly welcomed by all fans at first, or when the Clone Wars movie came out, and then the first few seasons of it. But that was mainly because many didn't feel like Anakin having a Padawan during the Clone Wars made a whole lot of sense. Again, story or consistency matters most to pretty much all fans. But the interesting thing with Ahsoka was that despite that less than warm reception, many fans who started out not liking her, including myself, they came around and started to really like and enjoy the character over time, to the point where in some cases she has even become one of their favorite characters after starting out really hating her. And there's nothing to say that couldn't have happened with Rey too, that if the next two films in the trilogy, after The Force Awakens, if they had been great, everybody, or a lot more fans at least, they may have come around and started to really enjoy and like Rey. However, that bridge has now long since been burned. For some fans, probably a lot of them, there is virtually nothing they could ever do with Rey in a new movie that would change their minds about her. The fans have been berated and called too many names to ever even want to give the character a second chance. But the problem with that is a continued rejection of Rey, or a refusal to give her another chance, is then, of course, seen as proof that they're intolerable of women being in Star Wars, and I don't know, they need to be taught a lesson. which is probably the reason, or part of the reason at least, why Kennedy is doubling down on Rey. She will not give in to those who have or will reject the character and what the character represents to her and others. I think this has almost certainly become very personal for Kathleen Kennedy. She no doubt sees this character as, again, not only something more, but also as her legacy. For better or worse, Rey and the sequels will always be what Kennedy is most known for in relation to Star Wars. And so, going back to the question, instead of taking the roadmap or blueprint that seemed to work just fine for a character like Jyn Erso, I mean, I've very rarely seen any kind of objection to that character over the years. Very few seem to have any sort of issue with her, or some of the other female characters created in the Disney era, or the ones not made in the sequel trilogy, I should probably say. Because pretty much all of them have their detractors, though in fairness, pretty much all the characters from the sequels have a good deal of detractors, male and female characters alike. It's not just the female characters that a lot of fans don't like in those films, it is literally all of them. But anyway, I think a lot of this has to do with Kennedy not wanting to admit defeat with Rey, because admitting defeat is admitting the agenda with a character has kind of failed. Though honestly, I don't know what someone like Kennedy hopes is going to happen with the Rey movie. I mean, I know what she hopes will happen. She hopes it'll be a massive success critically and financially, and that it'll sort of redeem the character and she gets to ride off into the proverbial sunset or retire from Lucasfilm as a winner and having achieved the one thing that's probably mattered the most to her, again, creating that kind of iconic female character. But realistically, this movie has a huge uphill battle ahead of it. A lot of people just don't like the character of Rey and won't care about this movie. They will not go and see it. There will even be a lot of people actively out there against it. Hell, there already is just from the announcement itself, and certainly after the comments from Charmin and Obaid-Chinoy, the ones that were dug up about her enjoying making men feel uncomfortable, which weren't even said about Star Wars. They were said like 9 years ago, but nevertheless they caused quite the commotion within the fan base and even beyond it. But I mean, this film is still years away, assuming it does indeed get made, which, as I was talking about the other day, I think Kennedy will find a way to make it happen as long as she stays put, as long as she is president of Lucasfilm. Anyway, this film is still years away, and there has already been a huge backlash, and that is not likely to be the last one, especially as it gets closer to potential release. In fact, it's only likely to get much worse, as is all the hostility in the fan base it will generate, which is something that Kennedy and everyone at Lucasfilm has to know and understand is going to happen. But they apparently don't care. They don't care if they create total chaos once again within this fandom. And look, I do get it. There are those out there who love Rey and are probably super excited for this movie, and that's fine if that's how you feel. I've got no ill will towards you for liking a character and wanting to see more of her. But realistically here, as I was saying, there's a good chance this film is not going to be a financial success, which they have to, again, know at Lucasfilm. And it's almost guaranteed to cause, again, this huge chaotic fight or rift in the fan base. Basically, there's every reason not to make this movie from a business perspective, but it seems like there's a good chance it's being made simply by Kennedy to spite the fans who don't like Rey. It seems like she'd rather make a point than make a good Star Wars movie that is potentially successful and loved by as many fans as possible. Because, again, let's be real at this point, there are a lot of people who are just done with Star Wars, and a Rey movie is not likely to ever change their mind. It is not likely to bring back any fans that have left. In fact, it's more likely to cause even more fans to leave. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about all this. Why do you think the Rey movie is getting made? Do you think this is a good idea or a bad one? And again, what's motivating it? Or you can always ask a question for a future lightning response video. You just got to start your comment off with "Hey Thor" and then ask away. But whatever you choose to do, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.